everyone, my name is Adjola Kolawale of ALOS NG and welcome to April Law Series. We're going to be focusing on tenancy law in Nigeria, but I need to state that the rent control law, each state has its own law. Most of these provisions are similar, and so our reference law would be tenancy law of Lagos State. Just very few differences here and there, but major basic provisions are similar. And so I'm going to start off with the basics, and I'm going to be talking about the exemptions of the tenancy law of Lagos State. The law does not apply to residential premises owned or operated by an educational institution for its staff and students. It does not apply to residential premises provided for emergency shelter. It does not apply to premises in a care or hospice facility, as well as does not apply to a public or private hospital or mental health facility, as well as also those providing rehabilitative or therapeutic treatment as well. I believe that the reason for this is these people are highly dependent, and they don't want them to be subject to the rules of the tenancy law. A landlord, for example, can decide to be flexible in receiving rent from those that run these facilities, or can even decide to give it out to those that run the hospital. Can decide to give them, it's just at their discretion, so they're not just bound by the provisions of the law. Also, the following areas are also exempted, and that's Apapa, Ikeja GRA, Ikoyi, and Victoria Island. These areas are harbor areas, and I believe that they have a very high, and real estate are expensive, much more expensive in those areas, and they have a high bargaining power, and that's what I believe that they will be able to, because in the first place, what the law is meant is was to protect tenants, landlord relationships and negotiations for rent and all that. But definitely those that are in these areas are those that are actually, they're already expensive, and so they believe that they'll be able to negotiate them, and sort out themselves when it comes to their relationships. So that's what I believe why they are exempted from the law in the first place. I've already mentioned this next point in one of my previous videos, and that has to do with, as a new tenant, the law requires, as a new tenant and also as a landlord, the law forbids that you receive, and of course the law forbids you tenants to also pay in rent more than 1 year's rent if you're a yearly tenant. So it's not only about the landlord that is receiving now. Also, you as a tenant, if you offer to pay, you are also contravening the provisions of the law. And this also applies to a sitting tenant. So a sitting tenant is someone that has been in the house for some time. Maybe you've stayed in the house for 2 or 3 years, and the landlord comes and says he wants you to pay 2 years rent, or you say, I have enough money on me and I would like to offer you 2 years rent. It also applies to you. You're not expected to pay more than 1 year's rent at a time if you're a yearly tenant, and also if you're a half-yearly tenant, you shouldn't pay more than the 6 months rent expected of you. Another thing I'm going to state is that for a new tenant, it's important that you meet the landlord, or you meet the new agent. One of the things that is required, and also in Lagos State, is that everyone running anyone that's an estate agent is required to register with the government. So every registered agent are recognized by the government. So ensure that you meet the landlord, ensure that you meet with the representative of the landlord before paying any money. You just don't want to be scammed or having to lose all your money. Then also I'm going to talk about the receipt. So after you've made payment, ensure that it is compulsory, because it's actually even an offense for the landlord not to issue a receipt to the tenant. And so the receipt has certain things it must contain as specified under the law. The receipt shall state the date on which the rent was received. It must state the names and addresses of the landlord and tenant. It must state the description and location of premises in which the rent was, of which the rent is being paid. So, for example, it must state Ikorodu, it must state Akoka, it must state, it must describe the location. It must also state the amount of rent paid, 200,000. It will state there. And also stating the period to which the payment will be late. Is it a 6-month tenancy? Is it a yearly tenancy as well? It's compulsory, like it's an offense, and as a tenant you're entitled to request for this. Another thing is the fact that there's some premises that we have that usually ask you for service charges. They ask you for caution fees. I think caution fees must be every area, but service charge is not every area. So those fees, the landlord or the agent is required to give you a separate receipt for that. And so this is something that you're entitled to. It's supposed to give you a separate receipt for that. So it's very important that you demand for that. And so then finally on this general session is the fact of tenancy agreement. I want to make a note was that there are some provisions that there's some things in here in the tenancy law that will not apply. We'll talk about that later on if it's not in your so tenancy agreement, as it's where it supersedes certain things provided in this law. So the law will state that contrary to the tenancy agreement, so we'll get to that in other videos, contrary to the tenancy agreement. So it shows the fact that tenancy agreement is important. It's when there is none that we fall back to certain provisions. But of course, some of these things that we've mentioned, 1 year's rent, those are offenses. Not issuing receipts, those are backed up with offense, so those are compulsory. But there are some provisions which we'll talk about later on. So why am I saying this? It's important that you read through your tenancy agreement and be sure that you understand it, you're sure that you're fine with it, you're sure that it's not like at the end of the day, anything happens, you're like, no, it wasn't there, no, I can't agree to this, and you already append your signature. So tenancy agreement is important in landlord and tenant matter. So it's important that you read through the agreement. If you don't understand, that you're giving to your lawyer to help to go through it for you. So yeah, thank you.